Yo, welcome to the Cosmic Paradox channel. Like, subscribe, and share. Peace, everybody. Welcome to 2023. This is our first video for the year, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna kick it off right. So, yes, according to this modern calendar that we do live by, that I will add, welcome to the year 2023, and it's only right that we kick off this fiscal year discussing the frequency and the vibration of the year, which is a 7. So 2023 is a universal year 7. So what exactly does that mean? Let's talk about what that means exactly. Now, before we get all into that, first, as I stated, today being January the 1st, we normally recognize that as the new year, but it's not the new year. According to ancient times or times of antiquity, the calendar that we currently live under um, is none other than the Gregorian calendar, which was established by one Pope Gregory the 13th in the year 1586. Now, some people will want to argue with you about this not being the new year and all of that, but let's just be honest about the whole thing, right? Let's just be honest. This is the calendar that your job operates from, that businesses are run from, banks, schools, and etc. So, spiritually, yes. Okay, we do know that the new year starts with the spring equinox. We do know that. We do acknowledge that. Okay, and so some people will not be as receptive to this message as others. So, for those who are here to be receptive and receive everything that we can get from this message, I welcome you. And we got some good things that we're going to talk about. And I got a few things that I can suggest to you that's going to help to prepare you for this new year and for everything that's expected to come your way. So, happy new year, happy new fiscal year, happy 2023, whatever you want to say. But me personally, as an alchemist, we learned that we utilize energy, and this is a mountain of energy that we can utilize, right? Because we know that everything is everything. There's always the opportunity to start anew, which is what the new year represents, which is what spring rebirth represents, right? Now, when you add the number 2023, you get the number 7. So the year 2023 is a 7 year. That's what makes it a 7. 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7. Now, I would further like to say, to reiterate, and to go to to specify that I'm not referring to your personal number. So if you're familiar with numerology, right? You may be familiar with the personal year number. This is not what we're discussing. We're just talking about the universal year number, which is a 7. Now, a personal year had the way that you come up with that number is pretty much your birthday and the current year. So, for example, my birthday is September the 5th, 9/5. So, if I add my birthday 9/5 to 2023, I get the number 12, meaning I'm having a personal year, the number 3. Okay? So we could talk about that a whole nother time. Let's discuss when we talk more in detail about numerology pertaining to the self and the individual personality, right? But um and if you do get your numerology session, your numerology reading with the yearly forecast, it does include looking at where you currently are in your personal year and where you are in your personal years, in your personal 9 year cycle. Again, another conversation. But so, again, we back to 2023. We end up dealing with the vibration of a 7. Now, if you have a 7 light path, or 7 soul path, or 7 is a part of your core profile in your numerology, then you may have more important lessons or more heightened lessons that you may experience this year because the baseline or theme of your life is already highlighted with a 7. Now, the number 7 itself represents fullness in the world of phenomenon. 7 is always referred to as the divine law of perfection for the divine natural man. When it comes to spirituality in the spiritual systems, 12 is a number of fulfillment instead of 7. So seven is the number of the temple, the human body, and its seven chakras and power systems, power centers. It is the teaching and the learning number, the number of practical philosophical experience. Such learning is usually acquired through sacrifice as the means of indelible instruction. So we usually come across sacrifice in terms of seven because it usually takes sacrifice for us to learn the lessons of physical fulfillment. Okay, so when we look at the numerological chart, we see that seven is the highest physical number. Now, if we look at it here, this is the physical plane, this is the spiritual plane or the soul plane, the feeling plane, this is the mental plane. In terms of if we're breaking down the numerology birth chart, right? So, and this is all broken down even further in the video, the birth chart of numerology. So when you're looking at it, seven is on the far end spectrum of the physical. So in terms of seven, this is you learning that the body is the temple. This is why there's seven chakras aligned with the physical body. So when we look at, so that is, further looking at seven and understanding seven in terms of fulfillment or completion in terms of the physical. Now, if you're talking about 12, that's more of a, this in terms of spiritual fulfillment, in terms of spiritual system. It's just a little slight difference or a way of looking at it. Now, if you're familiar with the book, if you bought the book, our book, A Guide to Inner Peace, a book about numerology, right? When we discuss the number seven in the book, let me pull that down a little bit for you. So we see seven as the analytical spiritualist. So sevens, when we're looking at seven, it's all about truth because sevens are truth seekers. They seek out the meaning of life. Sevens are the spiritualists, but they are also highly analytical, which is the test for them because they are highly intuitive and just as much as they are analytical. So they have to learn to trust their intuition as much as they can trust their logical information. So sevens have lessons around trust and openness. All right. So those with a seven, right, they may have issues around trusting people. And it's rightfully so because they've also usually dealt with some form of betrayal in their life. So loyalty, trust, and openness, these are key words for this vibration. So whenever you're looking at these energies in terms of life path, right? In terms of life path, this is what we typically see. Now, that also correlates just in terms of understanding the seven in itself naturally. So that's why when we're talking about seven, we can say they can be an angel to someone, right? To someone that has earned their trust, or they can be a demon to someone who has betrayed their trust. And that's seven going back to that spiritual or in the physical phenomenon fulfillment or completion. So when one completes those lessons around the seven, that's when there's transcendence for the seven. Okay, so understand when it comes to seven, sevens rarely take information for face value. Oh wait, we went a little too fast there. Okay, so sevens usually, like I said, they rarely take information for face value. They are willing to do the research themselves so they can trust the source. So them being skeptical, that's a way that they can often find out secrets because they always skeptical of everything. So they want to go research it. So that's why you got people that don't trust. They always want to go through something. They always want to look through something, and you end up coming across something that you shouldn't have came across, and then you feel betrayed because this person withheld that information from you, or they weren't open, because we're talking about trust and openness and all of those things. And again, seven, when we look at astrology, correlates to the house of partnerships, the house of friendships, which we're going to talk about that even more. So, you know, this is what we understand in terms of the life path in seven, right? And so seven being that mystical, symbolic, it's very, in a lot of ways, there's so much symbology correlated to seven in all throughout culture, society, multiple ways. When you look at it in science, There's 7 colors in the rainbow. There's 7 continents. There's 7 seas. There's the neutral pH is 7.0, right? The number of music notes in a scale is 7. The number of spots that's commonly found on the ladybug is 7. The atomic number for nitrogen is 7. When we look in psychology, there's 7 psychological types called the 7 rays, right? In Western culture, 7 is consistently listed as people's favorite number. Um, there's the what they call the 7 year itch in marriage. Happiness in marriage is said to decline after 7 years. When we go back to antiquity, there were 7 classical planets, and the derivative of the 7 heavens. There's 7 wonders of the ancient world. There's the 7 metals of antiquity. You have 7 days of the week. The 7 seas. There was the 7 sages. You have in Judaism 7 days of creation, right, leading to the seventh day being the Sabbath. There's the sevenfold vengeance visited on upon Cain for the killing of Abel. There was the 7 pairs of every clean animal loaded onto the ark. There was the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine in the dream. Um, the 7 nations, God told the Israelites they would displace 7 days of the Passover, the 7 branches on the menorah, the candle thing, the 7 pillars of the house of wisdom, the 7 archangels. Uh, it's just so many. When you look at Christianity, it was 7 loaves of bread, right? It was 7 demons driven out of Mary. It was 7 spirits of God, 7 churches, 7 seals, the 7 book of Revelation. You even have the 7 deadly sins. You have the 7 virtues. There was the 7 joys and the 7 sorrows of the Virgin Mary. When you look at it in Islam, you know, uh, um, it's even in Islam. Now I'm not as heavy in Islam as I am with the Bible, but there's the 7 doors to hell mentioned in Islam. There's the 7th day naming ceremony that's held for babies. There's the Circle 7 Quran, the 7 walks between the Al Safa and the Al Mawah. Part of my linguistics, that's performed by the Muslims during their pilgrimage. When you look in Hinduism, it's the 7 worlds in the universe. It's the 7 chakras or chakras. It's the what else is it? 7 steps taken by Buddha at birth. There's 7 social sins listed by Gandhi. When you go to Eastern tradition, 7 lucky gods in Japanese mythology. Um, and so many other references, man. 7 Cherokee clans. There's 7 islands of Atlantis. There's the 7 legendary cities of gold. There's the 7 dwarfs, 7 kingdoms. It's always 7. It's always 7, so it's a lot of references to 7 when we're talking about a journey, when we're talking about something being completed, something being done. So expect some sort of inner journey for 2023. All right, expect some sort of inner journey for 2023. When we're talking about 7 on a positive spectrum would deal with research, analyzing. So these are important tools that you utilize along your spiritual path. All right, being a curious seeker of knowledge. 7 is literally the number of the seeker. So those of you who are on your spiritual path, those of us on this spiritual journey, this can be a very, very important year for us. That we can make a lot of things happen pertaining to our spiritual journey this year. 7 is about being technical. Meditation is going to be very important. Do meditation. Start learning about meditation habits so that when the new year does come, you can already have a sound mind of what it is that you putting these things into practice because you're setting them in your mind. So what else is it? Solitude. This is a time of solitude. When you're dealing with 7, it's either solitude or isolation, depending on if you're in a positive or if you're in a negative. There is a difference. because people cannot be comfortable with their vulnerability or with their, inner world, and can isolate themselves from others. So there's that isolation factor that can come into play during this year. And there's a need for solitude. There's a need to be alone. There's a need to spend that time alone nurturing yourself. Solitude is different than, you know, loneliness, so to speak. So there's a balance there. There's a call for balance there. So there's something that people would need to address in that area. Perfectionism. Don't get caught up in being a perfectionist. Okay. Don't get caught up in being a perfectionist, because you can get very caught up in the details, so to speak. You have lightning spiritual insights when it comes to seven. So you can deal with uh, having those spurts of insightful information, insightful moment. If you're doing your spiritual work, because when you on your spiritual journey, there's moments that you just get those spiritual downloads. So that's the same things. So you can experience a lot more of those spiritual downloads this year. This is seven is about sacrifice. It's about learning to let go and let God. So you're gonna learn what that means for you. That you're gonna learn what that means, because even as magicians, that's what we have to learn how to do. You have to let go and let God. It's the same concept when you're doing magic. So when you do something, when you're manifesting something, when you're working to, bring forth those things from your mind, you have to let go in order for those things to manifest. Okay, so that's lessons of the magician. So learning to let go and let God. And you may have some sudden discoveries this year. You may discover a lot of things about yourself if you're really doing that work this year. Because that's what seven brings about, sudden discoveries. And a lot of time it has to do with your inner world. Or even in that projection, when I say people dealing with betrayal, that can be projected in your experience, your outward experience, because you can discover certain things about certain people. When you discover these secrets, what they're going to do is they're going to validate your intuition. So you're going to have to go back and reflect, because you already knew, and deep down you already knew, but you ignored it. And that's really what you're going to have to address, is why did you ignore it? Because on the negative end in that seven, what you can experience is secret motives, suspiciousness, people getting aloof, people being aloof all of a sudden, or people going silent, or, sarcastic times of arguments, the loneliness, easily being upset about certain things. These are things that's going to highlight what you already intuitively know, but you ignore, especially pertaining to your relationships, because seven got to do with relationships. Also, think about these words also. Think about sabbatical, wisdom. These are words that correlate with the seven energy. Introspection, concepts like slow down, recognition, honor, gratitude, plan, spending time in nature, seek rejuvenation, read books, expect the unexpected, spend time with yourself. So this will be a good time for you to take that energy, right? If it's just a present energy, and put it towards something. So learn from something. Take a class. Do something that you've always wanted to do. That's just about you and not about another person. Because see, the shadow side of that is gonna be overthinking. So you can deal with a lot of overthinking. You can deal with a lot of worrying and doubting, because that's what comes with a very analyzing mind, with a mind that's always seeking to validate. And that's what seven is dealing with, the analytical mind. So that can be the shadow side of it, right? So keywords: analytical, faith, intuition, logic, self-reflection, spirituality, philanthropy. This would be the year. This would bring like collective efforts in reforming spiritual practices. This is the best year to do that in terms of the universal year energy. Now, like I say, especially if you have a seven. Because as you build your spiritual practices, it's going to teach you how to trust that intuition. It's going to provide you with the faith. Because really, you're supposed to be learning to believe in yourself. You really have to believe in you. Now, I know a lot of people don't really like that word, believe. But see, when you're dealing in magic, which is just altering energy, manipulation of energy around you, changing your reality, belief is a very important concept, because there are things that you have to see that's not there. So you do have to believe that it is there, because it was first in your mind before it's going to become in the physical. Anything created in the physical was first created in the mind first. This is the basis. This is Hermetic principles. This is the foundation of all things spiritual. Now, even the Hermetic principles themselves are based on seven. It's seven of those. It's seven of those. So this is a good year, because collectively this is a seven. This is a universal energy. So you want to reform those spiritual practices. You want to dig a little deeper. You want to spend a little bit more time with yourself. You want to meditate a little bit more. You want to take extra time to build up that connection to source, which is within you, which is what seven is really truly all about. You want to dive deeper into your own practices, set intentions toward your personal development. You don't need to overthink the year. Don't overthink it. Be aware that seven can manifest as an energy of cynicism. So this is a year where you probably gonna purchase some self-help books, some spiritual books. You're gonna develop your intuitive voice. You're gonna want to get more in tune with more intuitive communication. That's all divination is, right? So when you're dealing in tarot, when you're reading astrology charts, when you're looking at astrology and numerology, you are refining the language between you and the spirit world, which is honestly your own inner world. So your spirit, the spirit, your higher self is always trying to communicate with you. So this is a good time to refine that, and zone in on what that is. Get specific in your language. Know how to talk. Get more in depth with your spiritual practices. You know, it's also a good year where you're gonna help others and others gonna help you. Because remember, seven is about partnership. It's about that balance, you know. So you may unlock that inner philanthropist uh within the self. So keep those things in mind pertaining to seven. And lastly, the last thing we're gonna look at, these are some keynotes. These are some keynotes that I want you to take with you for 2023. Okay, these are some key things, like because seven, ultimately is all about learning to trust the light in yourself, as well as the light that's within others. It's opening up to sharing your inner reality with the world. And let's be honest, people are not always consistent or trustworthy. So there's oftentimes paranoia associated when we're dealing with this particular things. People don't want to be vulnerable. People don't like how it makes them feel, what it makes them susceptible to. So you have to deal with the intention of the matter. What is your intention in this? What are you seeking in return? You see, because a lot of times, like I say, seven deals with lack of trust in your instincts or intuition. And that often leads to the betrayal. And when you have dealt with betrayal, it feels justified to have that paranoia, to protect yourself, to not be open with others. But that can be to a detriment, because the irony is you have to address the other side of it also as well. Because sometimes or somewhere there may be a time where you're too open. So you have to learn that balance. Are you sharing your heart too early on in relationships only to feel betrayed later on? Because what are you expecting to receive in return? Remember, seven is connected to relationships. and partnerships. So think of the seventh house of the zodiac and how it rules over marriage and partnerships. So with a seven, we are seeking balance between abject dependence and total independence. So you have to develop the capacity to know how much to trust a given individual in a given situation rather than extending instant trust or constant suspicion. There's a balance. That's an art. That's an art form, and that comes with the more you master yourself, the more you become aware of yourself. That's why you have to build in your own spiritual practices. That's what that means. See, mature sevens, right? They get agreements in writing. That's what time teaches a mature seven. They gonna get an agreement in writing. It changes from assumption to verifiable understandings. This is why you have Libra ruling over this house. And what's Libra sign? The scales. We think about a lawyer, a justice, right? So when you learn to trust your own intuitions, ideas, and instincts, you transcend to a different level. And you can trust that a destiny is working through you or a spiritual system, which is why most are focused on the spiritual system or a path. The people that deals with seven, that's why they're so caught up in their spirituality so much. So so when in this seven, you might find yourself cycling between overtrust and undertrust this year because you learn it, especially if it's a prominent lesson for you, depending on if you do have a life path of a seven. So what you will find with people with the negative seven is that they shut down and they shut people out, right? So be mindful of that and always keep that in mind. You might feel vulnerable to other people's ideas, and you can also be drawn to theories or ideas that you read or hear if you lack faith in your own inner resources. So if you don't trust your inner self to guide you, right, you will be misled because of it, because you are learning to trust your own inner spiritual system. Now, aside from these things written here in these keynotes, you should be able to see all of that. I won't read all that for you. If you need to pause it, you can, or whatever. Let's see. Kind of pull myself down a little bit. So yeah, that is but aside from that also, it's a few other things that I would recommend when working through this energy, when you become aware that this is where you are, where you're dealing with the seven. Just do your best to share what's really in your heart and not just what's in your mind. If and form clear agreements with others. Be clear. Try and be transparent. Try and be clear. So there doesn't have to be assumptions. Right? Also honor your need for privacy. You know? There's gonna be times where you gonna need to take a moment to yourself. So do that. Take the time to do that. Self-care is really gonna be a thing this year. You want to also trust. You're learning to trust your own instincts and intuition. So know that you are the expert on your body and your life. So sometimes your body may be trying to speak to you. So it's important for you to be able to listen and connect with your own inner self. But aside from that, we coming for it all in 2023, people. Right? Now, so, but anyway, we gonna wrap this up. And that pretty much does it for the universal energy around 2023. We dealing with this seven. Feel free to leave any comments or what have you about any insight that you may want to share pertaining to um anything discussed in this video as well. And if you find it helpful, be mindful and feel free to share it. Peace.